Hello, welcome back to Tranquility Rising's virtual space. My name is Ariel Schmidt, owner of Tranquility Rising here in Blue Ash, Ohio, just above Cincinnati. And today we are going to be talking about the Elemental Star Chart poster that many of you might have purchased or you're interested in, but you're unsure of how to read it and kind of navigate your way through the process. So I have come up with a list of symptoms or what someone might say to me when they come in for a session and how I evaluate where we might need to start on an elemental standpoint. So if you want to participate in this, I would kind of pause the video after this next section, write down how you're feeling, and then go from there. So the first thing I like to ask people is how are they feeling or what brought them into their session for the day? And people will just start to list things off. So a few of the common things that people tell me is that they're feeling anxious all the time or they don't know how to manage their anxiety. They're feeling low energy. They might be overly emotional, like they might not be able to stop crying, or they get triggered really easily, or maybe they're angry all the time. Low self-esteem is a big one that brings people in, digestive issues. So there's a lot of different things that can bring people into the studio and looking for elemental coaching or elemental help. So my advice to you is to pause this video, write down how maybe you're feeling today in this moment, or maybe the things that you've been struggling with in your life, and create your own list, and then unpause this video and then follow along with me. So I'm assuming all of you paused so you could write your list down, and now you're back with me. And I want you to look at your list and kind of pinpoint the one that you struggle with the most. That's where we want to start. If you have your star chart in front of you, go ahead and pull that down so it's right in front of you so you can kind of follow along. I'm going to share my screen with you here in a moment, and we're going to move through how to decipher where you go next and what steps you would take to balance yourself. So let me share my screen so we can get there. Oh, there you are. Okay. Let me expand this just a moment so you can see. Okay, so I do not have a virtual version of this chart. It is copyrighted though. You can purchase one in the description link of this video if you're interested. If you're local, you can pick it up in Cincinnati, or I can ship it to you. So those are all options on the website. So you see the 5 different colors. We have the earth element in red, the air element green, orange is water, blue is space, yellow is fire, and you're like, that doesn't make any sense. Why is water orange and not blue? Well, the 5 elements, if you are familiar with our chakra system, that most of the time we talk about in yoga, there's 7 chakras, starting at the root chakra, which is number 1. It's at the pelvis. Your second chakra is your sacral, which is navel. The third chakra is your solar plexus, so just below the breastbone. Fourth chakra is heart, so your chest center. Fifth chakra is throat. So it is believed that we are able to control the lower 5 chakras because the higher 2 chakras, or the last 2, the third eye and the crown chakra, those are kind of an elevated higher consciousness, and we have to be having our 5 lower ones aligned first before we can access the higher, or the last 2. So on an elemental standpoint, each one of the chakras correlate to one of the 5 elements. So your root chakra, so chakra 1, correlates with the earth element. Water chakra is correlating with, sacral chakra is correlating with the water element. Third chakra, or solar plexus, is our fire. Fourth chakra, heart chakra, is our air element. And then fifth chakra is our throat chakra, which is associated with our space element. Depending on the elemental system you might be familiar with, you might have heard of metal and ether, but I use air and space. So that's what's on the chart, but they're interchangeable, whatever you've heard, or wood too is a different one that's part of a different system. They're all the same, they're just used a little bit different wording. Okay, so that's the basics of the chart. You're going to notice that through the center of the chart here, there's different color arrows, meaning the arrow that it's pointing at. So this red arrow starts with the earth and it controls water. Water controls fire. Fire controls air. Air controls space. In essence, the lower chakra controls the chakra above it, and so on and so forth. Okay, it's called the control cycle. You're also going to notice there's a circle of arrows that go around the chart. This is known as your support cycle. So your fire or your third chakra supports your root chakra or earth element. Earth supports air, air supports water, water supports space, and space supports fire. I'm going to go a little bit deeper into what that all means here in a minute, but hopefully you are following along and it makes sense. Otherwise, push the pause button, go back a few moments, and re-listen to it. All right, so let's pinpoint one of our emotions that we're dealing with. If you have your chart in front of you, once you've identified what it is that you want to work on, you're going to look at the different balanced elements of the chakra. And I'm going to show you where that's at on the chart. I'm going to pick, let's pick anxiety. It's kind of been the theme. We're in this COVID-19 space right now. And I'm sure once a couple years go down the line and people are watching this video, they might not know what that is. But for those of us in this time right now, we are in quarantine. We're not allowed to leave our house. And there might be a little anxiety going on in our life. So when you're looking at your chart, if you're not doing anxiety, that's okay. You're going to look at your chart and you're going to look at these sections that say balanced, excessive, and deficient. And you're going to figure out which space or which element your specific issue is in. So since we picked anxiety, that's right here in the root chakra. But if we zoom out and we look at some of the other categories, the air element, you know, if we're feeling overly helpful or codependent, maybe antisocial, we might be critical of ourselves a lot. That's in our air element. When we head over here, this is where overly sensitive. So if we're crying a lot or get triggered a lot, that would be in this space. If we work at a job that is really demanding emotionally, we might end up becoming emotionally numb so that we just don't feel anything anymore. So that would put you into the deficient. So just move through each category. Again, up here in the top, balanced, excessive, deficient, and as well as fire, balanced, excessive, deficient. So each one is there. So check out your own chart, see where you're at. We are using anxiety as our example. So we can follow that we are deficient in our root chakra or deficient in our earth element. And there's two ways that you can fix that. You can bring in a control element or a support element, depending on if you're excessive or deficient. So because we are deficient, we do not want to control it because controlling it is to reduce it, okay? We want to support it. So simple enough, we go up here into our support cycle and we go into the different activities. Let me move myself. We would go into the different activities that support this deficiency. So it would be sports, playing, dancing, laughter, rituals, devotional activities, anything that gets your heart rate up. That is going to be a fire element, right? Fire, heart rate. It's going to be playful and gets you moving. There's also a section on your chart that says yin and yang. These are yoga focuses or asana focuses. So the focus of the fire element is to do core support exercises, which makes sense because our solar plexus is part of our core aspects. So if we are deficient in our earth element, we would want to bring in something powerful, which is a yang activity. So we would do core lifts, abdominal exercises, sun salutations, arm balances, anything that gets our fire up and that gets us moving. If we dive a little bit deeper into why we're doing arm balances, it's because out of the 12 meridians, the fire elements have 4 meridians, and they're mostly found in the arms. That's how we activate them. So arm balances activate the fire meridians, which support our earth element. So if we look up here to what makes the fire element balanced, we have confidence, good self-esteem, we're responsible, disciplined, and have goodwill. So if we bring those qualities into our life, they're going to help reduce anxiety and bring us back into a more balanced place in our earth element. So secure, healthy, living in the moment, ability to be still. That sounds all great. So think about yourself in the most anxious space necessary, right? Or anxious space in your life. Maybe it's fear of public speaking. Maybe you're in an uncomfortable new situation that you're unfamiliar with. What kind of virtues would you want to bring out in yourself to kind of promote or reduce that anxiety? And if we go up into our fire element qualities, we might bring our self-esteem with us. We might bring our confidence with us. Those are virtues that we can call upon that are going to support that earth element. And to get that support if we're not feeling that way, because usually if we have anxiety or fear, we might find ourselves a little weak-willed or a little poor self-esteem. So the fire element might already be feeling really low. And that's why we're feeling deficient in this earth element, because it's not getting the proper support it needs. So when we bring in these fire activities, whether it's part of an asana practice or the fire activities in general that get our heart rate up, they're going to make us feel better about ourselves, and we're going to get this confident boost, and that anxiety is going to start to reduce. All right? Okay. So that's one example. Let us take an example of an excessive space, and we can kind of talk about how to reduce an excessive. Let's talk about this guy. Let's talk water element. That's kind of another one that people might be experiencing these days. Okay, so we are feeling overly sensitive to what's going on in the world. We might be nervous, we might be tearful, we might just be unable to control our emotions, which puts us into an excess category of this water element down here, okay? So mood swings, maybe we're high and low because of the situation we're in. Maybe we're crying all the time. Maybe we're having some fear aspects coming into this. So just overly sensitive and being triggered a lot. That would put us in an excess category of this water element, which can make us feel disconnected to our partners. It can make us on edge. It can make us kind of snappy. So if we're excessive in this category, we're going to want to bring it down. So again, there's 2 things that you can do. Actually, there's only one thing you can do when you're excessive. You're going to look at the control element. Okay, so if we look at our chart here, what controls water is going to be this red arrow, and red represents earth and the root chakra. So we want to build our earth element up to the point where it's pulling back that water element. just think, if you have too much water and you add earth to it, it gets a little muddy. And if you add enough earth to it, that water finally soaks up into the earth and it's no longer there. That's kind of what we want. Or imagine the banks of a river. If we didn't have the earth there, the banks of the river would overflow and we would have too much water and it would flood our crops. So imagine that. That's kind of what's going on in our body. We have too much water, it's overflowing its banks, and we need to kind of bring it back in. We need to control it, build up our banks, and have better boundaries, which is how we fix the earth or fix this water element. So you can I kind of gave it away a little bit, but that boundary aspect, right? I didn't really talk about it when we were talking about the earth element, but again, these are all examples that are interchangeable. You just have to figure out where you're at on the chart. Okay. So the root chakra or the earth element, when we want to bring control over the earth or over the water, that would mean we feel secure in ourselves, we are healthy, we live in the moment, and we have the ability to just be still. Thinking of water, if we have too much water, not enough earth, we might be flooding everything and it's just going out of control. That's not the ability to be still. The ability to be still is a lake, a clear lake. It's got its boundaries. It's not going anywhere. There might be a slow trickle as it moves to wherever else it wants to go. So we can look at the different earth activities down here and the different asana focuses to kind of bring our earth element up. So walking barefoot, hiking, gardening, getting proper rest, and eating with the seasons. That's a huge one when it comes to the earth element. So what can you get locally at your farmer's market this time of year to kind of balance your body seasonally? When we look at the asana focus, we're looking at grounding activities. My favorite grounding activity is to just meditate under a tree and kind of imagining that energy move through me, through the tree, through the earth, and kind of like a circular cycle. When we're trying to control something, we want to pull in our yang again. Remember, we're building this up, so we want to bring in yang. Yin is to kind of reduce it. So if we had too much earth element, we would bring in a yin earth practice, or we would bring in the control cycle. But today we have too much water. We need to build up our banks. So we're going to look at a mountain pose, warrior, the locust. Like I said, anything that's grounding, that you're holding your ground with, that's going to bring a yang practice. In the previous example, I didn't touch base in these meridians because the fire element has 4 of them and it gets a little complicated. But we can look at these questions because they might be a little weak. Talking about the 12 meridians is a completely different video that I'll be doing later that you'll be able to see a few links for. But you can read through these questions. Sometimes it's nice to have awareness questions of why you might be overly emotional or why you're not able to hold your ground. And if you look right at the stomach meridian, one of the big questions is anyone crossing your boundaries, aka you're not able to hold your ground. And that can be including yourself. So I encourage you to kind of look through these questions, maybe answer them if they feel pertinent to your situation. And usually it's going to be a good way to bring a little bit of that control cycle into it. And you'll notice if I zoom out, because we're balancing one element at a time, it's ultimately going to shift how we feel altogether elementally, because if we build up our earth element, it's going to bring more support to our air, and it's going to bring more control to our water. So we might have to reevaluate where we are in the chart as we move through this. That's why we don't try to balance all of them at once. So you might have your list with you, and you're like, well, I have symptoms in every single element. And that's okay. Usually, the reason that we have symptoms in every single element is because there's one specific problem that needs to be taken care of to help shift the entire chart the way it needs to go. And then you'll feel a lot more balanced. So I always tell people, if you have something in all the categories, or maybe 3 categories or 2 categories, go to the category that's lowest in the chakra system, which would be the root chakra. That's number 1, water is 2, fire 3, air 4, throat, space 5. And work on the lowest one possible, because it's going to help shift the other ones in the correct way. So don't start with space if you have something wrong in your earth element. Don't start with fire if you have earth, and so on and so forth. Okay, so start with the lowest chakra possible and then start shifting and evaluating. And that will help you kind of read through where you're at. Again, if this is really confusing, drop some comments below. I can try and answer them. You can also book some elemental coaching with me online or in person at www.tranquilityrising.com and set up your assessment session with me to kind of see if we would be a good fit together. But other than that, this chart is there for you to kind of guide yourself and really tune into what's going on in the moment when you're between sessions with me, or really anything like that. So I'm gonna pop back at you. So if you have questions, again, let me know. Hopefully this was a great refresher for those that have seen the chart before. If you've never seen the chart, but you absolutely love it, again, the link is in the description below, and I look forward to sending them out to you guys. All right, have a wonderful day. Again, I am Arielle Schmidt, owner of Tranquility Rising here in Blue Ash, Ohio, right next to Cincinnati, and I will see you guys later.